Hi kids and welcome back to Yupp Master. Well, we have begun with the chapter about cockroaches and we started with the external features of them. Well, if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe to the Yupp Master channel, Yupp Master NEET channel, alright. Well, have you gone through the NEET paper which was recently performed by the students of 2020? If you know, in that chapter, one question actually had in that paper, one question came from this chapter of cockroach. And also for your information, every year in the NEET paper, one question always comes from this chapter. So this chapter, bag it up and you know that you got 4 marks in your hands. Alright, it's a very simple chapter, just that you need to be knowing some terminologies and you know that we're gonna do those terms all together. Alright, so are you with me today and shall we begin now? Alright, now we started with the whole chapter. We have started with the external features of the cockroach. Alright, let's just continue with the external features today, and we'll also learn about the different parts of the thorax, about the wings, about the legs of the cockroaches too. Alright, now before we start about the thorax and the neck and the abdomen, let's just take a quick revision of what we did in the external features in the previous lecture. Okay, so now when we are speaking about the external features of the cockroach, let's see first of all the dorsal view. Now for any given animal, remember, when we say or when we're talking about a dorsal view, it means the view from above, which you can see from above. The side facing the sun is called as the dorsal side, and the side which is facing the ground is called as the ventral side. So this, my dear children, is the dorsal view of the cockroach. Alright, now when we talk about the dorsal view, what are the body structures that you're able to see? Alright, first we're able to see the head. Second segment of the body is called as the thorax, and the third segment of the body is called as the abdomen. Now this is an insect which belongs to the phylum Arthropoda. And remember, here the insect is made up of, the body is made up of segments. So here we have the head, the thorax and the abdomen. Alright. Now can you see at the external features near the head region, you can also see the presence of the antenna. And if you remember from the last lecture, what exactly was the function of the antenna? Antenna was used for sense of smell. But not only was it used for sense of smell. So what was the function over here? Function here is very important of the antenna. Let's see what that function is. I'll write it in blue. It's very important function. What is it? First is olfaction. Olfaction means sense of smell. Not only olfaction, the antenna are also going to be helpful in order for the receptors, means in order for the tacto, means touch receptors. Okay, so basically the antenna have 2 functions. One is olfaction, second is tactoreceptors. Tacto means touch. Alright, next we see that there are the wings here. We know that the cockroach is an animal which is preferring always to be running. Okay, if at all you find a cockroach and it sees you, the first thing it wants to do is escape. And in order for escaping any situation, the cockroach always chooses to run. And because it chooses to run, we learned a new term for that, and it was called as, it is a cursorial animal. Cursorial animal or cursorial insect means that it is always going to be choosing to run as its first mode for escaping any situation. But the cockroach also does have wings. But one thing is there, like any other insect, if you see, the cockroach cannot fly for long distances. The cockroach is able to fly only for short distances. Alright, and that is the basic reason why when it wants to escape from a given situation, it will not choose to fly, but it will always choose to run. But yes, wings are present here. Today we'll be learning all about the wings also. Then we see that there is the presence of this small structure here, and that structure is called as the anal cercus. Now, the name might be sounding a little funny, that is anal cercus, but what is its function? The main function of this is in order for the cockroach to be sensing vibrations which are set on the ground. Okay, so this anal cercus is meant for sensing the ground vibrations. Alright, anal cercus is meant for sensing ground vibrations. Then next we see that legs are also present, and legs are the main way that they are going to be able to locomote themselves. Alright, so those were the dorsal view, the external features, external things which are seen according to the dorsal view. Now, do you remember we learnt about the exoskeleton of the cockroach, and I told you that anything and everything hence onwards from the beginning till the end of the chapter, if I am telling you that any part of the cockroach is tough, is doing the work of protection, is hard, then whether it is in an external part or whether it is in an internal part, that part will be compulsory made up of chitin. What exactly is chitin? Chitin is a polysaccharide, means that chitin is made up of carbohydrates. Alright, so even here the exoskeleton of this cockroach, it is an arthropod. Arthropods have basic exoskeletons. The exoskeleton of the cockroach here is made up of chitin, and when we talk about this chitin layer, it is further subdivided. What is it divided into? Well, look at this part over here. Okay, in this diagram, can you see that a differentiation has been given? Okay, you can see that the top region is one part of the chitin. Okay, this is another part of the chitin. Alright, well, let's just label that over here. The same thing, a cut section is taken and that cut section is placed right here. Okay, so there is a top region over here. Okay, that is one layer of chitin. There is another layer which is in the ventral part, and then there are the lateral parts too over here. These are the lateral parts. Okay, now only difference is that the chitin layers have been named separately. The chitin which is present on the top, the chitin which is present on the dorsal side, is called as the dorsal tergum. This is something you need to remember because it is the same constituents throughout the body of the cockroach. Whether we talk about the head region, the thorax region or the abdomen region, talking about the exoskeleton of the dorsal part is going to be called as the dorsal tergum. Exoskeleton of the ventral part is going to be called as ventral sternum, and exoskeleton of the lateral parts, remember lateral parts are two. Okay, that is going to be called as the lateral pleurons. So, three names we're giving for the same exoskeleton, just that they are located at different regions. So, the first one that we're seeing here, dorsal, the dorsal part, the orange part that you're seeing over there is the dorsal tergum. Second, ventral part, the lower part that you're seeing is the ventral sternum. And third, on the sides, those are going to be called as the lateral pleurons. Alright, lateral pleurons. These three names are going to be very, very important for your MCQs and for labeling other parts as we go ahead. Okay, so dorsal tergum, ventral sternum, and two lateral pleurons. These are names of what? These are the names of the chitin layers. Okay. Now, my dear children, you're not going to be calling this as chitin. You will call it as chitin. Alright. Okay. Now, talking about the head of the cockroach. We spoke about this yesterday. We saw that the head of the cockroach is basically divided into four major regions. Okay. Which were those regions? Let's see them here. First part we see, it was called as the compound eyes. Okay, these compound eyes, we saw that they were actually a result of evolution. It made the cockroach evolve into a better animal, into a more fit animal. Before, even the cockroach started with simple eyes, just like you and I have. But eventually, because of evolution and in order to survive under difficult circumstances, the cockroach started developing eyes on the sides or on the lateral parts of the head, and those were none other than these compound eyes. So, along with the compound eyes in the head region, you also find the antennae, okay, antennae, and after that there are the fenestrae. What are the fenestrae? Fenestrae is this part right here that you see over here. Alright, that part, that small white spot that you're seeing, that is the fenestrae. And finally, there were the mouth parts. Now, recollecting the different functions of them, when we talk about the antennae, main function, first was function of olfaction. Okay, olfaction. Second function of antennae was that of having touch receptors. So, if I am saying that it does touch reception, I can call it as tactoreceptors. It's called as tactoreceptors. Alright. Now, after this, when we talk about the compound eyes, these compound eyes, if you remember, they are located on the lateral sides of the head. And if we are saying that they are the lateral sides of the head, they are made, and if we are saying that they are compound, means that they are going to be made up of many simple units. Okay. Now, these compound eyes are made up of those simple units, and those units were called as ommatidia. What were they called as? They were called as ommatidia. Remember, in this chapter, I told you that it is the terms which are important. There are no basic, very important or very lengthy concepts here. It is all just about the terminology. So, when we talk about the compound eyes, these are made up of small single units, and how many of them? Each eye have around 2000 to 2500, and these units that are there, if you remember, they were hexagonal shaped. So, I can say that these are hexagonal units, and those units are called as ommatidia. Excellent, someone, Akshay, answered me. Those units are called as ommatidia. Okay. Alright, they are called as ommatidia. And do you remember the image that was formed? This is a very important MCQ, and the image that was formed in a cockroach was, it was called as a blur, okay, and mosaic. What is the meaning of mosaic? Mosaic means like a jigsaw puzzle, putting many pieces together, and it was called as a blur mosaic image. Alright, a blur mosaic image. Then, next part we talk about the fenestrae. Fenestrae is a part where it is right now in the cockroach, it is non-functional. If it is a non-functional part, may I call it as a vestigial part, okay? And the fenestrae is actually just representing the part which used to be the actual eyes of the cockroach. So, when the cockroach actually came into existence, its fenestrae was actually present and it was working like a simple eye. But then, as the compound eye started to develop, then the simple eye slowly, gradually became non-functional. So, here the fenestrae are actually going to be the non-functional simple eyes. Alright, and then we had the different mouth parts. The different mouth parts of the cockroach were about the upper jaw, the lower jaw, the upper lip, the lower lip. Let's just recall their names very quickly and then we continue. Alright, the upper lip was called as the labrum. Okay, lower lip, do you remember the name of the lower lip? It was called as the labium. Alright, the true jaw was called as the maxilla. There was an additional jaw, we called it as the mandible. And finally was the tongue of the cockroach, which we called as the hypopharynx. Tongue of cockroach was called as hypopharynx. So, this is basically what we did in our last lecture, where we learned all about the different parts of the head of the cockroach. Alright, now let's start. After the head of the cockroach, we're continuing now with the neck region. And the neck region of the cockroach can be called as the cervicum. Remember one thing, whenever you have that word cervicum, cervical, it always indicates neck. Okay, even for us, when we say that there are vertebrae over here in the neck region, then this is also called as the cervical vertebrae. So wherever you have the word cervicum, it is a word which is used for neck. Okay, so the neck of the cockroach can be called as cervicum, and we see that this neck region is actually helping the cockroach place the head with the thorax at a right angle. Okay, so it is at right angles with the head of the cockroach. Also, we see that the head is attached to the thorax region. Okay, and that too, how is it attached? By the head at the posterior region. It is attached to the thorax with the help of this neck, which we are calling as the cervicum. Okay, also we see that the cervicum, it is a short, it is slender, it is a flexible tube, and because it is flexible, that's why the cockroach is able to move its head. Okay, and it is connecting the head with the thorax. Okay, and we see that it is supported by, now look at this part over here, very important part here. Okay, the neck region is supported by 4 cervical sclerites. Now, this is not a vertebrate, this is an invertebrate. It does not have any vertebral column. But at the neck region, it does require some support. And the support over there is going to be chitin. The chitin plates which are there at the neck region are going to be called as sclerites. So, that chitin which is there in the neck region, there are how many sclerites? There are 4 sclerites present there. And those 4 sclerites are called as the 4 cervical sclerites. Okay, this is basically how the neck of the cockroach is going to be protected. But remember one thing, although we are studying the neck as a different structure, it is not a segment of the cockroach. The cockroach is divided only into 3 segments: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The neck is not at all a segment of the thorax of the cockroach. Okay. Now, after the neck, we saw that the neck is actually helping in movement of the head. Okay. Talking next about the thorax. When we see the thorax of the abdomen of the cockroach, okay, thorax is actually a structure which is itself divided into further 3 segments. Okay, so thorax here is made up of 3 distinct segments. Okay, it is the second tagma of the body. Second tagma. Tagma means that it is the second segment. Okay, it is the second segment. Which are the first and third ones? The first segment is the head and the third segment is the abdomen. So here the thorax is the second segment here. Okay, the thorax is made up of 3 distinct segments. Okay, which are those 3 segments? Let's remember those names together. First is called as the prothorax. Second is called as the mesothorax, and third is called as the metathorax. So we have 3 segments here: prothorax, mesothorax, and the metathorax. Okay, these are the 3 segments of the thorax of the cockroach. Don't forget these names: prothorax, mesothorax, and metathorax. Okay, now look at this region over here. All right, look at this diagram. If you see in this diagram how you can identify that these are the wing regions. So can I say that this is the dorsal part? Okay, and if this is where the legs are, then this naturally is going to be the ventral part. Alright, always remember I told you that when we're talking about the exoskeleton of the cockroach, okay, on the dorsal region, the exoskeleton can be called as the tergum. It's called as the tergum. And in the ventral region, the exoskeleton can be called as the sternum. Okay, and on the sides over here, the exoskeleton there are called as the lateral. They're known as the lateral pleuron. So one lateral pleuron here and another lateral pleuron over here. Alright, so 2 lateral pleurons there. Now, what I'd like you to see here, that each of the segments here, each segment, it is covered by the floor sclerites. Okay, we can see over here one on dorsal side, that is the tergum, one on the ventral side, that is the sternum. Now, why each segment? Which segment are we talking about over here? Each segment, we are talking about the 3 segments of the thorax. Those 3 segments would be prothorax, then mesothorax, and then metathorax. Okay, all of these are the three segments of the thorax region, and all of those segments are covered with chitin. The dorsal part of the pro, meso and meta is called as tergum. The ventral part of these segments is called as sternum, and the lateral parts are called as lateral pleurons. Okay, now look at this region here. This looks like one big shield which is on top of the thorax region. Okay, now this over here is the largest part, and that is the tergum of the prothorax. Now, why am I calling it as tergum? Remember, on the top, remember one thing, if you're talking about on the top region, this is called as the tergum. Okay, on the bottom region, you'll call it as the sternum. Alright, so this is the part where the legs are, okay, and this is the part where the wings will be. Alright, so upper part is tergum. So if I say that the thorax region is divided into three parts, okay, this is the prothorax, this is the mesothorax, this is the metathorax. Okay, so prothorax, mesothorax, metathorax. The prothorax, all of them are divided. They have a dorsal tergum, ventral sternum. Now remember one thing, that when we're talking about this part only, okay, I'm only talking about the tergum of the prothorax, first segment, upper part tergum. That is going to be very large. It is the largest there, and it is called as the pronotum. So look over here. It is the largest sclerite of the body. It covers the neck and a little part of the head as well, and it is going to be called as the pronotum. Okay, so that is the pronotum. Then there will also be a covering of the mesothorax and metathorax. Well, the terga on the mesothorax is called as the mesonotum, and the terga on the metathorax is going to be called as the metanotum. So you have those three names. Okay, what are those three names? The three segments are here of the thorax: pro, meso, meta, and their respective terga are given. Okay, the pronotum, the mesonotum, and the metanotum for prothorax. Okay, then for mesothorax, and finally for metathorax. What are these names? These are just the names of the chitin which is present on the dorsal region. Okay, alright. So that was all about the segments of the cockroach in the thorax region. Okay, and what are they? What are the names of their chitinous exoskeleton? Now, we also see that when we're talking about cockroach, cockroaches have wings. Cockroaches also are having legs. And remember one thing, these wings and the legs, both of them may seem like they are located at different parts. But remember that they are all attached at the level of the thorax. Alright. So we see here when we talk about the thorax, the first thing we'd like to mention over here is about the wings. Okay. So we see here that dorsally the thorax is having two pairs of the membranous wings. Okay. Two pairs of them. So there is a one wing here which is called as the forewing. The second one here which is called as the hind wing. So you have two pairs of wings. Forewings, where is it attached? Remember, thorax region has three segments. Which were those three segments? They were prothorax, then was mesothorax, and then finally was metathorax. Okay, so in all of these three, prothorax has no wings. Okay, it is only the meso and the metathorax which actually are having wings. Okay, so where are these wings located? The forewings are at the level of the mesothorax, and the hind wings are at the level of the metathorax. Okay, now we see here that these wings which are there, obviously they have to fly, so they require energy, they require oxygen, and they are supported by a network of veins inside them which helps the nutrition to flow inside the wings. Okay, now talking about the forewing and the hind wing, let's see how are they different and how are their functions different. If you've ever seen a ladybug flying, okay, when we speak about a ladybug, the first thing you imagine is a red colored insect with black polka dots on it, right? Well, whenever this insect wants to fly, the very first thing that it does is it opens that red and black colored shell. And once it opens it, then wings from inside come out, which it uses for flying, and it flies. Cockroaches are also very similar. They have two pairs of wings, but when the cockroach is just laying idle, you're not able to see two pairs. You just see the wings which are on top. Alright, so one wing is there inside and the other one is just behaving as a protection on top. Alright, so we have here the first uppermost placed wings are the ones which we're going to be calling as the forewings. Okay, where are these forewings attached is what is important. Forewings are, remember, they are wings, so they are going to be attached on the dorsal side. Okay, so here if I have the cockroach, okay, very simple, funny cockroach I'll be drawing. Okay, now if this is the cockroach and if this is the thorax region, remember thorax is made up of 3 segments. Okay, then remember at the first segment there is no wings, but yes, legs are found at all the 3 segments. Then where are the wings present? First pair of wing is located right here. Okay, that is the forewing. Second pair of wing is located right here, and that is the hind wing. So when we talk about the segments, okay, let's see if we want to label the segments, where are they located? Then this segment here is the prothorax, this segment here is the mesothorax, and this segment here is the metathorax. Okay, this here, these are the forewings, and these here, these are the hind wings. Okay, can you see how at the level of the prothorax there is no wings? Okay, so please remember this, that prothorax have no wings. Forewings are attached to, where are they attached? They are attached to the tergum. When I am saying tergum, what do I mean? Tergum means that it is the exoskeleton at the dorsal layer. So that is this part over here. Okay, when we are talking about the dorsal part, the exoskeleton here is called, that whole exoskeleton is called as tergum. Okay, and we see that the forewings are attached to the tergum of which segment? Of this segment over here, which is called as the mesothorax. Okay, so that's why we say forewings are attached to the tergum of the mesothorax. Okay, these forewings may also be given a separate name and they may be called as tegmina or they may be called as elytra. Tegmina or elytra. Okay. Now, after forewings, we also see that there are hind wings. Where are the hind wings? Let's see. Let's come back to our diagram right here. I'll give it a separate color. Hind wings over here are the ones which are attached to, again, these are also attached to the tergum, right? But which segment? The third segment, and this third segment is called as the metathorax. So, we see that the hind wings are the wings which are attached to the tergum of the metathorax. Did you understand this? Now, so we see here hind wings here, they are also given a name that these are true wings and they are attached to the tergum of the metathorax. Okay, now coming to what exactly are the differences between the forewings and the hind wings. Okay, alright, so let's come to the differences here, forewings and hind wings. Alright, let's see one by one what exactly are the differences. First, the forewings, in when you look at them, they are dark, whereas the hind wings are very thin, alright, thin, and they are transparent almost. Forewings are opaque, whereas the hind wings are transparent. Forewings are thick wings and the hind wings are very thin, they are brittle and they are broad. Okay, the forewings are majorly doing the work of protection. So just like any other insect, even when the cockroach wants to fly, first its forewings will open and then its hind wings will be doing the work of flying. That's why we're going to be calling the hind wings as its flying wings. Okay, so if the forewings are protective in function, then the hind wings are going to be flying in function. So this basically is the differentiation here. We conclude the differentiation with the last point, which states where the wing is located. The forewing is located at the tergum of the mesothorax and the hind wing is located at the tergum of the metathorax. Alright, so I hope that sets things clear. This is basically the whole thing again. These are the forewings and these are the hind wings. Forewings are attached to the mesothorax, hind wings are attached to the metathorax. Now out of these, which are the ones which are used for flying? These are the hind wings. The ones used only for protection, that would be the forewings. Remember, for flying, the structure needs to be thin, it needs to be delicate, only then it can fly. And that is why these wings, which are thick and dark and opaque, are going to do the work of protection. Whereas the ones which are thin and broad and delicate, those are going to be doing the work of flying. Alright. So I hope that makes things clear, the differentiation between the two. What you can do is, I'll just erase all these pointers here and you can take a screenshot of this slide where there is a differentiation between the forewings and the hind wings. Alright. Okay, so let's continue. Now, after the wings, if we talk about the next part of the thorax region, that would be the legs. The legs are the part which is very important and this is the major mechanism through which the cockroach is going to choose to locomote. Okay, now whether all the three legs which we're going to talk about, they all are similar. All the three pairs of legs, first of all understand all three pairs of legs. Okay, we're talking about the first pair, the second pair and the third pair. All three pairs of legs are located at the level of the thorax. Okay, none of them are found at the abdomen. Please remember this point. So here distinctly you can see very nicely that these are the levels of the thorax seen. All of them are alike and they are given the different names. Remember, we saw that the names of the thorax or the thorax could be differentiated into three segments. Okay, now which were those three segments? There was the prothorax, the mesothorax and there was the metathorax. Okay, now when we talk about these three segments, we saw that they could be called as the prothoracic legs, the mesothoracic legs and the metathoracic legs. So this here, depending on which segment that they are attached to, okay, depending on which segment, so this can be called as the prothoracic, okay, these can be called here as the mesothoracic and this over here can be called as the metathoracic. Okay, so these are the different legs which are attached at the level of the thorax. Alright, now after this, when we see the individual, when we go into the detail of the individual structure of the legs, okay, we see that the legs are all, you can see that they are covered with these bristles over here. Can you see these bristles over here? The whole leg, they are covered with those bristles. At some regions bristles are more, at some region they are less. But these are bristles which are helping in sense functions. That's why they are called as sensory bristles. Okay, these are sensory bristles and they are, each leg is made up of 5 segments. Okay, now these segments, because they are segments of the leg, they can be called as podomiers. Okay, segments of the leg called as podomiers. Now alright, so here the leg segments called as podomiers, which are they? Let's see the names of them. Okay, before we go on and see the names of them, if you're finding this lecture interesting, go ahead and give me a like, okay, and do share this and you can drop in a comment too. I hope you've done the work of subscribing to my page too. Alright, so shall we continue here? The first podomier over here, the first podomier is called as the coxa. What is it called as? It's called as the coxa. The next one, after coxa would come the trochanter. Okay, here is the second one, that is trochanter. The third one being the femur. So here the largest part over here that you're seeing is the coxa, the largest segment over here. Okay, this is the largest podomere, that is the coxa. The second one over here right near it, this small part over here is the trochanter. The third one we can talk about over here, this region here, that is called as the femur. After the femur we come to the next part, and that part over here is called as the tibia. Okay, this region over here is the tibia, and the last part over there, the last part here is called as the tarsus, goes all the way down. Okay, so we need to remember these 5 names. Which are they? Coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia, tarsus. Again, coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia and tarsus. These are exactly the 5 podomiers which are found in all the legs of the cockroach. There are 3 pairs of legs. Each of those are similar to each other. All the legs are alike, and all the legs are divided into 5 segments, and those 5 segments are one by one again coxa, trochanter, femur, tibia and tarsus. These should be pit-pat on your tongue. Alright, MCQs can come from here. Which is the thickest segment? And the thickest segment is this one here, and that would be the coxa. Which here out of these, which is the longest segment? The longest segment would be the tibia, that is this one right here. Alright, so 2 MCQs from this whole part. One is the thickest segment, okay, and one over here is the longest segment. Important for MCQs. Alright, okay. Now, when we see ahead, we also see that the tarsus region, this tarsus region, that region is again divided into 5 parts. And remember, the whole leg, okay, the word used for leg is generally podo. So if we say that the whole leg is divided into different segments, then when we call those as podomiers, then if I'm saying that there are even tarsus over here, then the tarsus is divided into segments which will be called as tarsomeres. Okay, so you have podomiers and then you have tarsomeres. But what is tarsomeres? Tarsomeres means the different segments of the tarsus. Okay, so tarsus is divided into 5 segments, and those are 5 movable segments. They are called as tarsomeres. Okay, now what you need to see is, when we talk about the tarsomeres, look at the ending part. Okay, talking about the end part of those tarsomeres, this is the tarsus part. This whole region is the tarsus part. Okay, now can you see how the tarsus part has different structures at the ends of it? Okay, what are those structures? Let's have a look at those. Okay, first of all, we see that the terminal tarsomere means the last tarsomere, it has a pair of claws. Okay, there are claws present, and that too in pairs, as you can see right here. This here is the claws present here. Okay, this is a claws, and also it has an aroleum, and that aroleum is basically a flexible pad which is going to be used for adhesion. That is the reason why the cockroaches can climb up your walls, right? Alright, because they have these flexible pads for adhesion, for helping it cling on to walls. Alright. Now also we see that when we talk about the legs here, let's see what each segment is doing. Okay, coxa, the very first podomere, coxa, the largest one. Coxa is responsible for connecting the leg with the thorax part. The whole leg, all those 5 podomeres are attached to the body of the cockroach because of the coxa. Okay, coxa. Next, when we talk about the trochanter is attached with the coxa, and that is a part which helps the movement start. So, trochanter is movably, this is the part we are talking about, it is movably attached with the coxa. And also, the trochanter is fused with the femur region. Okay, so you can see that trochanter is a part which is attached to the coxa as well as with the femur. Next we see that femur and the tibia, these are the parts which are bearing most of the bristles. Okay, all these bristles that you're seeing, we call those as sensory bristles. Those bristles are majorly present at the level of the femur and at the level of the tibia. Okay, next we see the joints of the tarsus are the tarsomeres, okay, and they bear the soft pads which are called as plantulae. Can you see over here, these over here? These are what we're calling as the plantulae. Okay, and we also see that the terminal part is ending in claws which are given right over here. Terminal part of the tarsus. Remember, tarsus had tarsomeres, alright, and at the ending of the tarsomeres, we learned that there are three structures. There are two structures, one being the claws and one being those adhesive pads. With those adhesive pads, they were called as aroleum. What were they called as? They were called as claws, and there is aroleum. Alright. Okay, so this was all about the legs of the cockroach, alright. So when we speak about the thorax region of the cockroach, remember, thorax region of the cockroach has basically two parts to it, alright. So if we give just a small flow chart of it, when we talk about the thorax, okay, thorax region of the cockroach, first of all, we need to know which are the segments present. Second, we need to know all about what we know about the wings. Alright, about the wings. And third structure present at the level of the thorax would be the legs. Alright, if you remember when we spoke about the segments of the cockroach of the thorax region, segments were three segments. First was called as the prothorax. Okay, second was called as the mesothorax. Okay, and the third was called as the metathorax. Okay, so these are the three segments present at the thorax region. Next, when we talk about the wings region, wings have got, there are two wings. First we have the forewings. Alright, and second we had the hind wings. Alright, forewings, if we speak about the forewings, these were the wings which were meant for protection. So their main function of the forewings was that of protection. Okay, and talking about the main function of the hind wings, those were that of flying. Because this one here was thick and opaque, and this one here was thin and transparent. Okay, now speaking about the legs, do you remember the names of the legs? First of all, legs were divided into, they were divided into 5, okay, let's have it blue. Legs were divided into 5 podomiers. Okay, so 5 podomiers. Okay, which were those podomiers? First came the coxa, which was the largest. Second came the trochanter. Alright, trochanter. Third was the tibia, the femur after the tibia, and the last one being the tarsus. Okay, so this basically was a whole flow chart of the thorax of the cockroach, alright, being the segments, the wings and the legs, alright. Remember one thing, that the location of the wings and the location of the legs. Remember that the forewings are located at the level of the mesothorax. Okay, and the hind wings are located at the level of the metathorax. And talking about the legs, well, there are 3 pairs of legs, alright, okay, and there are 3 pairs, and all the 3 pairs means each one pair is located in one segment of the thorax region. Alright, so that sums up the whole part of the thorax of the cockroach. Now we would move on towards the abdomen of the cockroach. The abdomen of the cockroach is the part which is seen to be very prominently segmented. Okay, so we see here that when we look at the abdomen rather than any other part of the cockroach, this is the part where segments can be easily identified. And how many segments are there? This is very important for MCQs, very important, that there are 10 segments present in the level of the abdomen. How many segments? There are 10 segments present. Okay, now just like every other part of the body of the cockroach, even the abdomen is made up of an exoskeleton, and that exoskeleton is made up of chitin. Here also, the exoskeleton on the dorsal part will be called as the dorsal tergum. It will be called as the ventral sternum. Alright, ventral part is called as the ventral sternum. Okay. Alright, so that part there is the ventral sternum. Okay, and talking about the lateral sides, these sides here, those are called as the lateral pleurons. Okay, so we see here dorsally, we see that there is a tergum and a sternum. Then at the level of the abdomen, it is having infusions of proteins, and those infusions of protein, the name of the protein is called as scleron. What is it called as? Okay, so when we talk about the dorsal side of that, it is called as, because there is protein infusions inside this chitin layer, it can be called as sclerotized tergite. What is tergite? Tergite is just the name of the chitin layer. Okay, what is sclerotized meaning? Sclerotized means that it is infused with the protein. Which protein? Scleron protein. So now, instead of just calling it as tergite layer, I will call it as sclerotized tergite. Okay, next I will call the ventral part as sclerotized sternite. Okay, and lastly, when we talk about the lateral regions, those pleurons, they are unsclerotized. They are just made up of chitin. So we remain, they are called as the unsclerotized pleura. Okay. So these were the 3 layers of the exoskeleton of the cockroach. Now, that too at the level of the abdomen. Now, seeing ahead, we know that there are 10 segments, right? If there are 10 segments, then ideally we would think that there should be 10 terga, there should be 10 sterna. Okay, but look at this part, what's written here. There are 10 terga, means on the dorsal side, there are 10 plates which are the chitinous plates. But talking about the ventral side, in the lower side of the cockroach, talking about the sterna, there are only 9 sterna present. The 10th sternum is absent. Okay, in the males, okay, when we talk about male cockroach and female cockroach, in males, the 8th tergum, and in females, the 8th and the 9th tergum, both of them are not to be visible. Okay, in males, which is not visible? The 8th tergum is not visible, and in females, the 8th and the 9th tergum are not visible. Why are they not visible? Because they are overlapped by the 7th tergum. So these are structures, these are figures that you're going to be you'll have to just remember for your exams. 8th tergum for male, 8th and 9th tergum for female. Both of them are not visible. Why are they not visible? They are not visible. I am not saying that they are not present. I just said they are not visible because they are overlapped by what? By the 7th tergum. Okay, alright. Next, when we see here the 10th tergum and as we see here in the abdomen of the cockroach, look at these parts over here. Okay, we are now talking about the rear end of the cockroach, abdomen region, the very ultimate, the posterior most part of this insect. Okay, The posterior extension that we're seeing of the cockroach, it is bilobed, as you can see here. Okay, the bilobed posterior extension of tergite number 10 is called as the epiproct. Okay, remember always one thing, that whenever you have the word proct always is indicating something like the rectum. Okay, so that posterior most part is called as the epiproct. Okay, then there are paraprocts, as you can see in the diagram. Those are triangular modifications. Okay, or it can also be referred to sometimes as sternite number 11. Okay, so that is called as the paraproct. Alright, the inner ones, and we see that both of these, what is the function of them? Both of them are meant for oviposition. Now, oviposition. Ovi basically would naturally mean something to do with eggs. Oviposition is basically, it is an organ, or we can say that ovipositor is an organ which animals are using for laying their eggs. Okay, so even the cockroach is going to be laying an egg which has several small eggs inside it. Okay, and that's why even the cockroach is having an ovipositor. So it is an ovipositor, it is used for laying the eggs, it is also used for transmitting the eggs, and also to prepare a proper place for it, because the egg needs to be protected somewhere. It needs to be away from other animals so that nobody can come and eat it. So that is basically what the ovipositor is used for by the animals, alright, for laying the eggs and for placing it in a safe and proper place for the egg to grow, alright. So remember these names, epiproct and paraproct. What are these? They are meant for mating and they are meant to be an ovipositor, alright. Okay, now we see here that when we are talking about the abdomen segments, remember what was the count of the abdomen segments? There are 10 segments in the abdomen, very important for your MCQs. Okay, most of these abdominal segments, they don't have appendages. Okay, but segment number 10, okay, you know that appendages means when I'm talking about the legs, all the legs, the 3 pairs of the legs were located at the region of the thorax. But at segment number 10, there is some apparatus there. And what is it called as? It was none other than what we spoke about a little while back in the beginning of this lecture. It was the anal cerci. So, these are the anal cerci. Where are they located? They are located at the 10th segment. Okay. Now, here, what is the anal cerci meant for? Anal cerci is basically meant for the cockroach to be sensing vibrations. Okay, so let's say in the middle of the night you wake up and you're thirsty for a glass of water. You don't want to wake anyone around you. So what do? You tiptoe yourself into the kitchen. You don't turn on the lights, but as soon as you reach the kitchen, then you'll turn on the light to get yourself a glass of water, right? But then what do you see? Let's say unfortunately there are cockroaches in your kitchen. What you'll see is the minute you reach the kitchen, all the cockroaches are going to be running around here and there helter-skelter. How is that? You just reach there and you just turn on the lights, but the cockroaches are behaving as if they're already knowing that you're coming and they're running here and there just to free themselves, to escape from that person. Well, any insect which is at a ground level, okay, it has these cockroaches have these anal cerci. Anal cerci are basically meant to sense ground vibrations, because no matter how thin you may be and no matter how slowly you may be walking, if you are taking yourself from your bedroom to the kitchen, then you are going to be putting out some sort of vibrations on the ground, which that cockroach which is already on the ground can very easily sense, because it has this anal cerci present. Okay, so anal cerci is going to help that cockroach detect any ground vibrations that you're going to be putting onto the ground, so that it can sense any enemy which is coming from a very far or even a nearby location. Now, it doesn't end there. Anal cerci have other functions too. And which are those? It doesn't stop only at ground vibrations, but anal cerci also does the work of hearing. As we saw, the antennae, they did the function of sense of smell. Then the anal cerci are doing the function of hearing, and this is an organ which can detect sound. So if I am saying that not only that they are sensitive to ground vibrations, let me use red color, not only are they sensitive to ground vibrations, but also they are sensitive to sound. They are also sensitive to any air movements which are happening around that location. Okay, so this is the basic function of the anal cerci over there. All right. Okay, now also we see at the level of the abdomen that there are small openings present, and those openings are meant for respiration. We saw the whole head. We did not see nose anywhere, right? So how is a cockroach breathing? It's breathing through these small openings which are present at the level of the abdomen and some at the thorax. They are called as spiracles. What are they called as? Those are called as spiracles. The spiracles are small openings. They are placed 2 in the thorax region, 8 in the abdomen region. Okay. Now these spiracles that we are seeing are going to allow air to come in, means it's allowing oxygen to come in, and at the same time those spiracles are going to allow carbon dioxide to go out. Now where are these spiracles placed? Remember, there are 3 segments for thorax, okay, and 10 segments for abdomen. Okay, now out of all these segments there are 2 pairs. Why do I say 2 pairs? Because on both the sides, on this side as well as on this side. Okay, so there are 2 pairs of these openings at the thorax, and there are 8 pairs of the openings at the abdomen. 2 for thorax, 8 for abdomen. Okay, total 10 spiracles, 10 openings for the for this cockroach to be breathing. Okay. Next and the last part, this is the part which is about the genital openings so that the cockroach can reproduce. We see that the genital openings, they are present at different segments for male and female. We will see the exact location and where the segments are present when we study the reproductive system. But genital openings are present at different segments for both the sexes, and those openings are actually surrounded by bristles, and if they are bristles then they will be hard, and if they are hard, naturally they will be made up of chitin. Okay, so the genital openings are surrounded with bristles, and those bristles which are surrounding the opening are called as, look at the name over here, it's a big word, that opening, those bristles are going to be called as gonapophysis. What are they called as? Those openings are, those bristles are called as gonapophysis, which are surrounding the genital openings. Okay, so children, today we completed about the whole external structure of the cockroach. Okay, we learned about the thorax, we learned about the abdomen part. In our next lecture, we'll be learning a little bit about how the cockroach is choosing to locomote, and we will be beginning with, or we'll be discussing about the digestive system of the cockroach in our next lecture. Alright, so until our next lecture, stay with us at Yupp Master. Do come to see my next lecture, and keep reading, keep studying, and stay home, stay safe, and take care. Bye-bye.